So anyway, as a lawyer, I have the advantage of having some concept of like how America was supposed to work before the progressives got a hold of it and ripped it to shreds. And in particular, I have some interest in the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which says that the right of the people in their houses and papers and effects shall be protected against unreasonable searches and seizures, and you shouldn't have any warrants issued without probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And this vision of government is an idea where the government has no right to actually single out anybody in particular and say, we're going to look into this guy and we're going to gather, unless there's a reason. And beyond that, beyond the prosecutor or the police or the detectives or whatever, there's a second level of checks or balances, which is that somebody in the judicial branch has to sign off on this thing. And somehow that's slowly eroding away to the point where we now have some very disturbing things going on. Every single picture or every single letter or postcard you send, they take a picture of it and they keep it. Every single telephone call you make, how long it is, the duration, who it is, where you were when you made it, maybe the contents, if they're lying about that, that's also captured. Every web search you do, every posting you make, every single thing is being scooped up and gathered. They can attach devices to your car and they can report your location. They can turn your cell phone on remotely and listen to you. They can turn your computer on remotely and listen to you. And they did this with a woman at CBS who was pursuing the Fast and Furious story. I don't know if you noticed that, but they did that, and they're gathering records of every single credit card transaction, any purchase they can do. They do this by tapping into these giant fiber optic cables all over the world and in the United States and in some room in San Francisco and just suck it all in. And they're building the biggest computers that have ever been built. And it's hard to get an understanding of the scale of this, okay? You all know what a megabyte is, right? Okay? And 1,000 megabytes is a gigabyte, and 1,000 gigabytes is a terabyte. And you can buy terabyte drives now, okay?
Not quite right, but close enough.
What's wrong? What's the right answer?
It's actually not 1,000 megabytes. I'm a computer engineer, so.
Okay,
You just being a jerk.
What is it? What is it?
It's actually all, well, it's all nitpicky.
Are you talking about the fact that it's like 1024 and
Yeah.
20? Okay. Aside from that,
Aside
kidding
from
me?
that.
Well,
Oh,
hey,
God.
I
Seriously.
started out by saying I'm a computer engineer.
you're quite correct. If you
Oh my
take
gosh.
powers of 2, it doesn't round up to an even 1,000.
Yeah.
I understand. But if scaling up, 1,000 gigabytes is a terabyte, 1,000 terabytes is a...
Fail on an exam.
We're gonna kick your ass after this. Go ahead.
1,000 petabytes is an exabyte.
Jeez.
1,000 exabytes is a zettabyte. Now, some people project that the global internet traffic is going to be a zettabyte or so a year, in a few years. We're not there yet. And 1,000 zettabytes is a yottabyte. And for those of you who are fans of scientific notation, that's 10 to the power of 24. And so somehow, without anybody really paying any attention to this at all, we are now trying to build computers, and one computer in Utah in particular, that has yottabytes of storage capacity, okay? And you don't build something like that unless you're going to use it, right? And the only thing you can do with yottabytes of storage capacity is store everything about everybody all the time. And so they're just doing this, and nobody's really paying much attention to it. And I'm interested in the question of, what does the Fourth Amendment mean? And some people are now trained in elementary school or whatever, we should ask an expert, okay? And if you ask an expert what the Fourth Amendment means, it doesn't protect any of this data because the data's in here, or it's in a server somewhere, and it's not actually in your house anymore. But those aren't, eternal truths. Those are interpretations. Those are choices about what the Fourth Amendment means that somebody has made because they work for the government. And people who don't work for the government can say, wait a minute, why don't we have privacy? Why can't we do this? What should the Fourth Amendment mean? And so the question is, why do we let the ruling class sort of decide that the Fourth Amendment means nothing? Why do we let them say, the data is stored by Google, so we can just have it without even telling you? And it gets further and further. They now have radar where you can drive down the street and beam into a house and see everything in the house. They can see what's inside a safe to see if you have a gun, They can use these new smelling technologies to see if there's a single cartridge's worth of powder in the house or certain other substances. We have a government, because of technology, that can reach further and further and deeper into people's lives, and it's now controlling people to a level never before seen in all of human history. And I'm talking about, Vlad the Impaler, Stalin, Hitler. Nobody could have this much control as they have now. One of the things that's buried in the new immigration bill is a provision for certain biometric stuff to have at the border. So before anybody goes in or goes out, let's take a picture of the eyeball and the fingerprints and whatever. It's all in the computer. It's all there. It's all instantly accessible. It's a level of control that no one has ever seen before. And this is all happening because we just all sit and let it happen. Frederick Douglass once said that what any people will quietly submit to is that you just figure out what the level of injustice that you can impose upon them, and you just keep going until they rise up. And it'll continue to keep growing and growing and growing until people rise up. And we've had politicians in the past who've tried to warn us about this. Even Eisenhower. You look back at Eisenhower's speech on the military-industrial complex, it's sort of weird. He's all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's like, watch out, this thing's growing up, and I'm leaving now, so good luck, guys. And we didn't pay attention. Kennedy said the same thing. Kennedy said, made some speech like that. I could find it for you on the internet or something. I could read a piece of it, but it's not necessary, and we all know what happened to him. So we've gotten to this point where we have this national security state that has all this information, and at the same time it's engaged in all this bizarre conduct, like taking 90-year-old ladies and dragging them off the wheelchairs and doing stuff like that. And things are getting worse and worse and worse. And so what I'm trying to urge people to think about is, why doesn't it mean that your data, whether it's in this phone or it's in Google or whatever, that it is protected by the Fourth Amendment, and the government isn't entitled to go around and gather yottabytes of data on everybody and everything for whatever purpose they want, because that data will be used badly. Not only do we have all these secret facilities, okay, we also have a new phenomenon, secret law, okay? Secret law is one of the more sinister things to me as a lawyer. We have something called Section 215 of the Patriot Act. And Section 215 of the Patriot Act says that the FBI can make an application for an order to get the stuff, okay? And each application has to have a statement of facts showing that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the things sought are relevant to protect against international terrorism. Okay, well, what does relevant mean? Now, you go to law school, you learn what relevant means. Relevant means it has something to do with a particular dispute, right? You're suing somebody for breach of contract, and you're not allowed to have discovery about, what kind of dog they have, because it's not relevant to the breach of contract case. And for 200 years, we've had the idea that government thinks they know something about somebody, they suspect them of something, and the universe of relevance is the information about whether that guy did that thing, okay? We now know that, because the administration released a white paper on this subject back in August, that relevance now means, and I'll quote the white paper, the government has reason to believe that conducting search of a broad collection of telephony metadata records will produce counterterrorism information, and it's necessary to collect a large volume of data in order to employ the analytic tools needed to identify that information, so the standard of relevance under Section 215 is satisfied. So what they did is they went into court and they said, well, relevant means we have to collect everything, because if we look in there, we might find something, okay? And nobody knew this for 10 years. The lawmakers all wrote relevant, and relevant, that's fine. But that's not how it was done. And you wonder, when this thing came in front of these Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act judges, what kind of self-respecting judge is going to approve this definition of relevance? And then you start to think about the power of the people who have this kind of information. And it's, you go to the judge and say, well, do you want them to know about those web searches you did about curing your sexual disease or whatever? You can imagine any kind of thing they could do. Who knows what they can do? But it all got rubber stamped and it all got approved, and that's what relevance means now. It means we have to have everything because we might find something. So from that perspective, you're going to hear in the next few months that they're introducing bills to fix this problem. But none of the bills are going to fix this problem because they don't define relevance. They leave it in there like that. And all the places where things go wrong are places that people can't see and don't really know about, and so they're not going to fix them. So what does it mean when you have secret law? Well, then you're not a nation of law anymore at all, right? you're a nation of the people who are on the inside who know what the secrets are, and the people who are on the outside who don't know what the secrets are. And so I spend a lot of time litigating against the government. I fight against government secrecy every day of the week. And every time I want a piece of information from the government, the answer is always, oh, well, it's secret. You can't have it, but the government can have it. Why does anything in the Department of Agriculture have to be secret at all? Why does anything in the Department of Education have to be secret at all? I mean, and on top of the secrecy, we now have sort of the militarization of all these agencies, okay? The Department of Education now has SWAT teams with automatic weapons. The Social Security Administration just bought 174,000 rounds of ammunition for its SWAT teams. And every one of these agencies is building up this structure of secrecy and power and SWAT teams, and it gets sort of uglier and uglier. This ammunition thing is I don't think anything really to sneer at. I mean, they have bought 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition.
Hollow point
The hollow
ammunition.
point ammunition,
Built
the
for
expensive
killing
kind,
people.
just for killing people. It's not for target
No,
practice.
not at all. Which is what they tried to make.
Right,
The
which
case.
is what they tried to say. It's to intimidate citizens of the United States because this knowledge is power, the secrecy is power, and we're getting all this secret power developing more and more, and it's a fundamentally anti-American development. The country's darkening, and these things are darkening, and there's a lot of people on the wrong side of these issues. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, we have to protect people. We have to protect people against the dangerous terrorists. That's essentially just a bunch of crap. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of the best reasons is that for the last 40 years, the art of code making has been better than the art of code breaking. So if you encrypt things properly, people cannot see them at all, no matter what they do. They had this horrible person who was arrested in Idaho for some child murder. They grabbed his laptop. They never got into it. They don't know what it's on it today. They're still sitting in an FBI lab trying to crack the thing because the power to conceal things through cryptography is better than the power to break it. Anyone can buy this stuff. Anybody can use it. Anybody can buy prepaid phone things and throw them away in a month. People who are dedicated terrorists can outwit these things. So the idea that we're going to build some giant computer system and it's all going to protect us is essentially wrong. And another reason for this, and maybe it's not so popular to say it, is that, as Ann Coulter says, you look at these things and 99% of the problem is young male Muslims between 25 and 35 or whatever it is, and there's no focus on that whatsoever. I remember, after 9/11 looking and reading these applications for visas for the 9/11 hijackers. I'm coming to the United States, I stay in Boston Hotel, go to Boston College. It's just completely incoherent applications. They're all rubber stamped. They're all left in. But if my girlfriend wants to fly over here, she's got to sit there in Denver for 2 hours being interviewed about her entire family history. And you look at this stuff and you went, but what the hell is going on? What the hell does it mean when Russia calls up and Germany calls up and says, hey, you better watch out for these two guys. They're two evil Chechen terrorists. Nobody pays any attention, Maybe it's because if you collect all the data on every single American human being, you spend all your time wallowing in that data looking for things, you can't even pay attention to what's important. And so you don't protect anybody. You want to know what the cops in Boston were focusing on the day the Boston Marathon bombing? They were doing they were having a drill involving a group bombs by a group of right-wing militiamen called the Free American Citizens. I'm not kidding. This is what they were doing. That's where the focus is now. The whole focus of the government is gradually shifting to an internal thing where anyone who has the word free or American or young conservatives of Oregon, that's what's important now, not the terrorists.
You leave a border that's open when we know OTMs are at an all-time high once they're terrorists have been talking about coming through the border.
Bush had a pilot program called National Security Entry-Exit Registration Program where they took some countries like Yemen and Pakistan and they said, you come in, we're going to record when you come in and record when you leave so we can find out, if you're even here anymore. Obama killed that program. No one has any intention of focusing on what's important. If you wanted to go into a mosque to listen to some of this stuff, you'd have to get approval from something called the Sensitive Operations Review Committee, high up in the United States Department of Justice. It's so sensitive that nobody knows who's on the committee. We have funding the Muslim terrorists in Syria or whatever. So we have a government that really isn't interested in protecting us. And even if they were, so many of them are proven liars. You know, I read about this thing where Wyden questions this General Clapper guy. You know, is there any circumstance under which we're collecting data on millions of Americans? No. You know, I saw the videotape.
Yeah.
You could tell he was lying. Okay, yet we have a whole culture of all these congressmen and senators who are sort of used to being lied to, and it's fine. And then Obama puts Clapper in charge of some committee to reform things, and nobody says squat. You know, so these problems are not going to solve themselves. You know, they really aren't. You know, if I were a senator, I'd be saying, okay, let's arrest this guy for you know, contempt of Congress, or let's get him indicted for perjury or something like that. But there isn't really any accountability anymore. And what is happening is we're turning into this sort of banana republic where all of these strange things are happening and no one can really explain it. And these little, you get these warnings, you know, from hundreds of people come forward. You know, we've all heard of Snowden. There's another guy, Tice, who said last summer that these people who are collecting all this data, they focus on members of Congress. They focus on high-ranking military officials. They focus on judges.
Supreme Court judges.
Yeah, Supreme Court judges. And this guy did it. This guy did it. He says, one of the judges is now sitting on the Supreme Court. I have had his wiretap information in my hand. 2 of them are former FISA court judges, the ones who are supposed to protect us against all the spying. So so it's getting really bad. It's getting really bad. And so the question is, you know, what can you do?